Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are grabbing a topic that impacts, well, every single person trying to share a relevant idea.
Whether you're submitting a paper, pitching a project,
Or just trying to get a seat at the table. We're talking about institutional affiliation bias, or IAB, and our mission today is really to figure out what gives knowledge its authority. Is it the brilliance of the thought itself, or, is it the logo on the university letterhead?
we're diving into sources that provide some pretty startling evidence about how we assign credibility.
Yeah.
We really need to determine if intellectual value is tied to an individual's insight, or if an institution's brand just acts as this absolute gatekeeper.
And the opening story in our source material from Luiz, Valério P. Trindade, it just perfectly captures this whole problem.
It's a great hook.
It is. The author pitched an article to a big, an influential academic blog, and it was accepted. But then just days before publication, the offer was just gone, withdrawn.
And the reason is the core of our whole discussion today.
Exactly. The author had honestly replied that at that moment, they didn't have a formal institutional affiliation. And that was it.
It's just an immediate, sharp lesson in the power of branding over substance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And what's so fascinating, and what the author points out with, I think, legitimate pride, is that the very same rejected article was then circulated and cited by tons of other researchers.
So the idea had legs.
The idea proved its relevance and its impact entirely on its own terms, even though it was actively gatekept.
Which forces this core question for, all of us who consume knowledge. If an idea is good, does the lack of an organizational badge, that admission ticket, somehow undermine the quality or the authority of the thinking that produced it?
And the author's initial conclusion is so sharp and clear. Institutions are vital, of course. They provide resources, they help with networking, they give prestige.
Right, the platform.
Exactly, the platform. But
Yeah.
the heavy lifting, the actual intellectual labor, the creativity, the innovative insights, that still comes exclusively from the individual mind. The person is the engine.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because dismissing a powerful idea just because the person lacks a formal affiliation, that raises what the source calls serious epistemological concerns.
And that's a term we should probably break down.
Yeah, for you, our listener, who might not have that jargon top of mind, when we say epistemology, we're basically talking about how we decide what counts as real, valid knowledge in the first place, right?
Precisely. It's the theory of knowledge itself.
Yeah.
So, if we systematically exclude certain voices based on where they sit or where they don't sit, we're fundamentally distorting our understanding of what's credible.
And you end up just hearing the same voices over and over.
That's the risk. It reinforces intellectual homogeneity. It creates these unfair barriers. And because this whole thing is so structurally embedded, the academic literature has actually coined a term for it: institutional affiliation bias.
And the evidence that this bias exists is, frankly, astounding. I want to spend a moment on the argument from Dr. Amin Sharifan. This isn't just a feeling people have.
No, this is data.
It's almost like a control group level of shock. Sharifan highlighted cases where identical manuscripts, literally the same words, same data, were rejected when submitted by unaffiliated researchers.
But when those same manuscripts were resubmitted under a prestigious institutional letterhead?
Accepted, with no changes to the content.
Just think about that for a second, you. It means the content was objectively good enough the first time. The packaging was just wrong.
The exact same intellectual contribution was treated as garbage until someone slapped a famous logo on it.
It's a pure demonstration of branding just completely trumping substance.
And it gets more nuanced. Dr. Reid Horchani's study confirms it's not just about affiliated versus unaffiliated.
No, it's about having the right badge.
The level of prestige and public recognition of an institution plays a massive role in whether peer reviewers accept or refuse a paper. A reviewer is just far more likely to rubber stamp something from a globally recognized university.
So it's not just about having the parking pass. It's about having the platinum level designated spot right next to the dean's office.
Yeah, exactly.
And the scope of this bias just keeps expanding when we look at geography. That becomes another whole dimension of this.
Tell me about that.
Well, studies clearly show that editors of high-impact journals, they often favor submissions from North American and Western European institutions.
And the numbers on this are they show a massive difference in treatment. If we look at the study by Fengguan Liu, Talal Rawan, and Bador El-Shibli,
Yes.
they revealed that articles coming from Asia, Africa, and South America go through significantly longer peer review processes. We're talking about huge delays.
Even when those papers have been professionally proofread and polished.
Which is career-altering.
Absolutely. Imagine being a brilliant scholar in Accra, Ghana, waiting a year, maybe more, for peer review, while an equivalent or maybe even weaker paper from a prestigious Western institution gets reviewed in 3 or 4 months.
It's a structural barrier. It dictates who gets amplified and who gets left behind.
And this connects to an even bigger picture our source touches on, the author's previous work, The Color of Knowledge in Brazilian Media.
Right, where this bias clearly intersects with racial dynamics.
Exactly. That work criticized how whiteness is often implicitly positioned as the default bearer of knowledge.
Meaning black voices are marginalized or maybe pigeonholed into certain niche topics.
Which just compounds the effect of not having that right institutional seal of approval. It shows that IAB isn't just an inconvenience, it's a profound structural mechanism that maintains existing power hierarchies.
Wow. So we know the effect of IAB is exclusion and suppression. But I'm still struggling to understand, if the evidence of bias is so clear, why do reviewers and editors keep doing this?
That's the key question.
It just seems so self-defeating for the whole pursuit of knowledge.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We can kind of break down the why into 3 key behavioral and structural explanations that the sources highlight.
Okay, let's start with the one that gives people the most benefit of the doubt.
That would be the first reason, which is purely cognitive shortcuts. Think about the life of a journal editor or a reviewer. They are volunteers or incredibly busy academics, and they are drowning in submissions. They just can't afford the intensive labor of assessing every single piece purely on its merit.
So what do?
They use the institutional name as a proxy, a heuristic. It's dangerous, but they assume institutions with high prestige are inherently better, more relevant, or at least a safer bet.
It's like brand loyalty. We're so programmed to trust big brands at everything, from soda to cars.
It's a cognitive default that becomes destructive in academia. The brain seeks efficiency. If institution A has a great track record, it's just easier to assume the next paper from there is also good, rather than expending the energy to prove a paper from unknown institution B is equally good.
The shortcut saves the editor time, but it ends up sacrificing quality control for the whole system.
Right, which leads directly to the second explanation, risk aversion.
So fear.
A kind of fear, yes.
Yeah.
Publications, and this applies to academic journals, university presses, even mainstream media, they all operate under a fear of reputational damage.
They're protecting their own brand.
Absolutely. They worry that if they publish work from an unknown or unaffiliated author, and that work turns out to be weak or poorly sourced or just controversial and hard to defend, their own brand will suffer.
So it's just safer to stick with the established names, the proven entities.
Even if the quality is only slightly above average, because the risk to their reputation is minimal.
But wait, isn't some risk aversion necessary? I mean, if a journal published completely unvetted, shoddy work, how would we maintain any standards?
That's the tension. They should vet based on content and methodology. But when risk aversion overrides critical assessment, the standard isn't quality anymore, it's safety. They're optimizing for brand safety, not intellectual rigor.
Which brings us to the third factor, and maybe the most deeply human one, social capital.
Academia, like any high-status profession, is deeply, deeply networked. An affiliation isn't just a job, it's the admissions ticket for being in the club. And those on the inside just naturally get more opportunities for collaboration, for recognition, than those who are always on the outside looking in.
You just pictured at a conference, right? You introduce yourself as an independent researcher versus a professor at a top-tier institution.
Which person gets the immediate follow-up meeting?
Right, that institutional affiliation is the social capital at work. It bypasses the need for you to prove your worth from scratch every single time you meet someone new.
Exactly. It's proof you've already made it past that initial grueling vetting process. So the community is almost inherently suspicious of anyone who bypassed that route.
So if the reasons for the bias are shortcuts, fear, and this really entrenched networking, what are the actual implications for the system of knowledge itself? It goes way beyond just individual frustration.
It does. It fundamentally alters what we as a society collectively know. We can identify 3 primary adverse consequences here.
Let's start with the conceptual cost.
The first is intellectual homogeneity.
Everyone sounding the same.
Exactly. By systematically favoring voices from these selective clubs, we ensure that only certain viewpoints are given credit, amplified, and replicated. So the same authorities stay in power and you get intellectual echo chambers.
And a real lack of genuinely disruptive thought.
Which leads directly to the second major consequence: global inequality.
Because we're leaving whole regions out of the conversation.
Competent scholars from less prestigious institutions are just systematically marginalized. Their work, no matter how rigorous, struggles to reach the high-impact platforms where it can influence global thinking.
And that doesn't just hurt the scholar. It deprives the world of crucial perspectives.
And that brings us to the ultimate loss to society: innovation suppression. Independent researchers are perfectly capable of producing groundbreaking ideas. And the source explicitly points this out, especially in fields like the humanities and human sciences.
Right, where you don't need a $100 million lab to have a revolutionary insight.
All you need is a sharp mind and time. So dismissing these unaffiliated voices because they lack a huge institutional backing just stifles innovation. It prevents paradigm-shifting ideas from ever seeing the light of day.
This whole picture, it just tells a very sobering truth about where we are right now. In academia and in the media, too, credibility seems to hinge less on the substance of an idea.
And far more on the brand name. A logo opens doors, its absence quietly but firmly closes them.
That is the current reality, and it is frustrating. But the source makes sure to provide a strong counter-narrative, reminding us that, while institutional affiliation is treated as the ultimate seal of legitimacy today, history tells a much, much richer story.
It absolutely does. When we look back, so many of the figures who produced the most influential foundational works in human history did so as independent researchers or semi-affiliated.
Or even while actively challenging the institutional norms of their day.
The author provided this powerful sample of 20 names spanning 10 countries, people who redefined their fields. And the common thread among them is what you, the listener, need to internalize: their reputation, their authority. It didn't come from a university name.
It came from 3 specific things they demonstrated through their work.
That's right. Their authority came from originality, insightful and innovative ideas, and revolutionary and courageous argumentation.
They had the courage to argue against the established club.
And they backed it up with insight. Those skills, originality, and intellectual courage are intrinsic to the individual. They are not the exclusive property of affiliated scholars or prestigious institutions. The intellectual weight has to reside with the person who did the work,
Not the building where they happen to have an office.
If we let this institutional bias blind us, we risk just refighting old battles, suppressing the very voices that could advance our collective understanding.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, moving forward? The final point of reflection from this source is just critical. The absence of an institutional affiliation, whether it's temporary or permanent, should not offset one's value as an independent mind.
And understanding this bias is so crucial for anyone trying to assess new information. Don't let the branding, the logo, distract you from the substance of the argument itself.
Right.
When you encounter a piece of research, make it your job to read beyond the letterhead and evaluate the argument on its own terms.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If the pressure to affiliate, that need for the institutional admission ticket, is so overwhelming, how many genuinely revolutionary ideas are we missing?
Ideas that might challenge the very structure of the established academic club.
Exactly. How many are we missing simply because the innovator either refused to or couldn't get the required institutional badge? Think about the knowledge that might be intentionally kept outside the gates because it just doesn't conform to the accepted script.